But today we have a very special episode, right?
Yes, we do. And it's actually based on a book that Maddie recommended for me. I mean, I've never heard of it. So obviously when I actually started reading it, I was like, whoa, where has this book been all my life, kind of. So thank you, Maddie, for this recommendation. It's been
Yes,
amazing.
absolutely. This book was recommended to me by my mom. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Yes. And my mom, she just has this thing where she always recommends me good books and courses and stuff like that. So she came to me one day. She's like, "You have to read this book." Um, to be honest, the original series is in Russian, and it's a collection of books. But they actually translated it in multiple languages, and in English they have like a really thick book. And if you're watching this video, right, you can see Marina has it, I have it, and it's very thick, and it contains all the volumes of the books in one. But the book is called Reality Transurfing. It's written by a Russian author called Vadim Zeland, and he's a quantum physicist. And he wrote this really interesting book. I think that it is quite out there. And we were talking earlier how we want to make a disclaimer that maybe some of the things that we're going to say are not that common, or they will sound crazy or weird. But I personally have implemented some of the things that I read in this book, and they work. But I'm still now getting back to it. I'm so glad, like, our conversation in the last episode brought us back to this book, because this is a crazy book, and it's very powerful. And I hope that a lot of you are going to read it. But you have to actually make notes and apply it, because it's a very practical book, right?
Yes, yes. And it's actually, it's quite tough when you start reading it, like as we said in the disclaimer. So if you read it, or if you listen to this episode / watching this video and it doesn't resonate with you, that's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to resonate with you. It's quite a tough book, but it's full of insightful, I would say, advice, steps, and it's just some perspective about the world that I haven't thought about or looked at before.
And even if it doesn't resonate with you now, it might resonate with you later. So, you
Exactly.
know, keep it there and get back to it, because I think that everyone should read this book if they want to become more powerful manifestors, and also more effortless manifestors. Because I think this book, although it's super heavy and there's a lot of content in it, it ultimately helps you realize that you can really design the life that you want without a lot of effort, based on a few principles, and really understanding how powerful your energy and your thoughts are, and how powerful everything is around, and how we have all these different energy blocks, let's say, or how would we call it, energy entities that's the pendulum we're going to talk about in a little bit. But everything is energy, and ultimately if we learn how to work with that energy, and if we learn to accept that energy is real, then we become unstoppable, I think, personally.
Yes. And when we learn that with energy as well, like being on high vibration is how we're going to actually attract what we want, just by the power of thought. And that's ultimately law of attraction. So if you're familiar with law of attraction, it's kind of the same principle. However, how in this book it's portrayed, I would think, in a more realistic, and you actually understand the mechanism behind.
Yeah, because the guy's a quantum physicist, so he obviously a lot more grounded, I would say. Although I think that, you know, in the spirituality world, things are very much embellished in, you know, these cool names and all these kind of, like, you know, crystals and incense and things like that, which are amazing. But at the end of the day, the basics are the basics. In any kind of spiritual practice, even religion, like, there's some basic things that those that understand, you know, can get a lot of power from and with, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should dive into this book and give more, you know, our conclusions, let's say.
We actually want your feedback as well, but we're thinking of making this a bit of a series, not every week, but every 2-3 weeks, maybe have an episode dedicated to the book as we go through it, because we're going to start with kind of like the first things that happen in the book, and then as we go further, we're going to get into like manifestation techniques and a lot more good stuff. So obviously we can't talk about the whole book. How many pages does it have? It has
Oh, like 800.
yeah, like 765 pages. So obviously we can't go through the whole book in one episode, but definitely we can make this a series. So if you're up for that, let us know. So Marina, because this is the first time you started reading the book, I'm actually going over it again. Tell me and tell us, what are your first thoughts and what are some insights you've taken out of it from the first pages, let's say?
So when I started reading it, I was hit with a lot of physics. And I cannot say that it's my strong subject, you know. So obviously I was there like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. And then I was turning the page, oh, that sounds interesting as well. But I think there's something that I haven't really thought of before, and that's the pendulum. And I think I'll let Maddie here explain a bit more, because I'm just, you know, I just started reading it, so I don't want to give you like a wrong definition. But it's just more about like how energy, like Maddie said before, it's so important, and we don't even realize that sometimes our thoughts can dictate our energy, what's happening in our lives. When we have a negative thought, or when we think about something like, you know, oh, I wish this wouldn't happen, and then guess what, it happens. And I had that experience in my life, and I never thought that it's actually because I was thinking about that, you know. It's a bit crazy how he's explaining it. So yeah.
Yeah, so the pendulum, I don't know exactly how to explain it really, but let's say we have a group of people that think in the same way. So they have the same sort of thought energy, right? And they focus that thought energy together. And that focus of so many thoughts, so much energy creates sort of, how would you call it? How does he call it? He calls it a pendulum, right? The pendulum that sways, right? And the more people feeding with their energy, the more people that feed that pendulum with energy, the more powerful it sways and the more powerful it becomes. And I think he has this one example about the football match, right? Where,
Yeah.
you know, you have the players on the field, and then you have one side that supports one team and then the other side that supports the other. And when one of the players like has it, like makes a mistake, and then how they all turn against him, you know, and they all sort of send that negative energy towards the player that made a mistake, right? I mean, with all that negative energy, the player could kind of like die from that much energy, but because the pendulum kind of gathers that energy, then that person is able to survive, let's say. I don't know if that makes sense, but ultimately the pendulum is the energy focus of many, many, many people. And oftentimes it can be a negative thing as well.
Yeah, especially if we have seen what's happening, like disasters and this kind of like events that we're talking about. So this kind of like negative kind of outcomes and energies that are putting out there, and then we, you know, turn on our television and then we see that, and then we also feed this pendulum with our energy, our negative energy. And so it's kind of, it starts feeding on all of our negative energies, and then it becomes even bigger and bigger and bigger.
And also I think the distinction to understand is that you can see that event, right? And you can be aware of that event, but the moment you give it energy is when you start getting emotional about it, right? So you start getting emotional about it and you start feeding it with energy. And how would you not do that is when you hear about something that is not great, you know, you can obviously you're aware of it, but you don't have to start thinking about it and feeling bad and getting emotional about it. Maybe it sounds counterintuitive, but I never get too emotional about disasters and things like that. Not to say that I don't care. It's just that I don't want to feed that pendulum and feed that pendulum. And also, what happens is when you get attuned to that frequency and that pendulum, you are then sent on a lifeline that is very similar to that vibration, which makes you more susceptible to things that are similar to that or bad things happening to you. Again, this is super out there. If this doesn't make sense or it's a bit weird, I get it. But for me, like, I noticed that when I attune to things that don't have the greatest frequency, then I'm more likely to have bad things happen to me in the next period of time. So I avoid that by all means. And of course, when the whole coronavirus thing started, right, we were all super feeding into this pendulum, right? And I personally was Googling like coronavirus news every single day. And I was super aware, like I knew that what I was doing was not good, but I kept doing it and I kept doing it. So we need to be very aware how much energy we give and what do we give our energy to.
Yes, that's really important. And that's something that I never really thought about.
Yeah.
Like Maddie said, in a way, I didn't really feed into this, like, when, of course, it's the same. Like, I care about what's happening, of course, and I want to help as much as I can, but I would never really feed into these emotions of feeling, I don't know, just these negative emotions, because at one point you're really going to start to feel it, to feel this negative energy. And so it's very important, like you said, to detach yourself and just take like an observer kind of perspective and just observe, let's say, and don't feed into this energy. And it's very important to kind of know what your goal is and what you actually want from this lifeline, because at the end of the day you can swing in many directions that are not really for you, let's say.
Exactly. And remember, he also mentions this thing about the boomerang effect. So whatever thought you put out, it returns to you like a boomerang. So if we're smart about it, we can just put on those good thoughts because they're going to return to us, right? And as soon as we get on that sort of frequency and lifeline of positive energy of luck, then we're going to keep attracting more and more and more of that. And actually, because you told me earlier that you started reading Abraham Hicks, and I don't know if you've gotten to the point where you read about the 17-second rule.
No.
So they have this,
but I know it.
You know the 17-second rule.
Yeah.
This is something that really helps, I think, makes the whole lifeline shifting, I think, a lot more practical. So focusing 17 seconds on your desire and focusing your positive emotion to your desire gets you in that vortex, right? Gets you in that frequency. And then you're more likely to move throughout your day and attract those things that are in alignment with your high vibration. So this is a nice tip when you start your morning. Instead of thinking about all the things that you have to do or remembering how shitty yesterday was, is just literally smiling and focusing for at least 17 seconds on being grateful, on what you want, on what's working, right? And then that's gonna sort of position you on a higher frequency, and then your day is more likely to be very good or continue with blessings and good feelings.
Yeah, it's setting the intention. You need to set the intention that even like today it's going to be an amazing day. It's so important to set in the intention of what you want to accomplish in the day. And okay, I know this is a bit confusing because we're also talking about Abraham Hicks for a second, but I think also what he meant, like what he mentions, is that it is so important to visualize and just say it, like, I expect today to go like this. I expect to see what I want to see. That's very important. And that's also feeding your energy with positive energy and exactly what you want to see. And then what you don't want to see, you're not going to see. So you're not going to feed the pendulum with negative energy.
Exactly. I 100% agree. And just remember this one thing, I think you're going to love it. And I think you like it, Marina, as well. The infinite number of parallel realities.
Oh.
This is such a nice thing to understand. And if you want to believe it, then it's just going to make your experience a lot more fun. Vadim Zeland talks about the fact that we live in a universe with an infinite number of parallel realities. What does that mean? Is that we can choose and choose to shift to whatever reality we desire, right? So that means that there's a version of you being successful. That means there's a version of you that is broke. That means there's a version of you that is a scientist, or a version of you that is a celebrity, or a version of you that is married, or a version of you that is single, or a version of you that lives in Portugal. You know what I mean? Like there's multiple versions of you and multiple, actually infinite number of parallel realities. And all you really need to do in this life to get to those realities that you desire is to attune to them and to embody that version of you, right? And it's so much easier said than done, let me tell you. Because if it was that easy, like right now, I would already be in the reality, like complete reality that I desire, right? It takes some time, and often the problem is, we were talking about it earlier with Marina, the problem is that we're very good at setting intentions. very good at visualizing, but we're not patient. And there's always a lag between the time you set the intention and when you shift to the parallel reality. And you have to keep embodying and keep embodying and keep embodying that version of you until you reach the version, until it actually becomes like a physical thing, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's something I'm struggling with. It's being patient, exactly, and not obsess over what I'm trying to manifest. But I think here it's also very important to note that we can be whoever we want to be, and we can do whatever we want to do. And when you're hearing, maybe the first time that, oh, they're parallel universe and there's so many versions of myself and I can attract whatever version I want, it's scary because you don't really believe it. I didn't really necessarily believe it at first.
Yeah.
But trust me that it's possible. And you can start with small things, like we said, like you can start with small things, maybe manifest, I don't know, like I did a coffee machine, who knows? But that is proof to you that you can actually do it. And your thoughts are so powerful. And then you can just become whoever you want to be.
I 100% agree with that. And the thought I have now is that a lot of the times we don't even know what we want, because we've been conditioned by society and by our life experience to want a certain thing, right? We all want to, we all want to get married, and we all want to have children, and we all want to have a successful career, and some of us want to be famous, or whatever. We have these conditions from society that sort of make us desire certain things, but I think that we don't spend enough time really going within and realizing what we really, really, really want, because we're all very different and we don't have to want the same things. And then I think that applies a lot to friendships and relationships as well, because there's two people, let's say, coming together in a relationship, and they have no idea who they are, and they have no idea who they want, what they want, and then they get frustrated at each other because one of them, or maybe they do know what they want, but then they get frustrated at each other because one of them wants that and the other one wants that. But it's fine, you just know what you want, and then you align yourself with people that want the same thing, and then you live your life together with those people. I don't know if that made sense, but I think it's important to find out exactly what you want and how you want your life to look like. You don't need to live in a big city if you don't want to. You can live in a small city and enjoy. You don't need to be a billionaire if you don't want to. Like, you can live a comfortable life. You don't need to have a business if you don't want to have a business. It's just to really go within and find out, what is it that I want? What will make me happy? Because, yeah, you can shift to an infinite number of parallel realities, but what do you really want?
Yeah. And I actually said that as well, like so many times, like success has a definition for everyone. You define what is successful, exactly like you said. At the end of the day, like, what makes you happy? And we shouldn't give into these pendulums, like, oh, we need to be famous and we need to have like 10 cars and I don't know, like live in gold. No, if you want to be, happy with living what is considered honestly an average life, because that's what's considered in society, then that's okay. Like, at the end of the day, that's your life journey. It's not their life journey, or your, I don't know, colleague or your neighbor. Do whatever you want to do.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people sort of confuse things, and they think, I really want to be successful, but then they don't really understand the responsibility that comes with success, and how much you have to overcome, not even circumstance, but how much you have to overcome yourself. Because, I really want to be a successful person. I've always wanted to be a successful person. And I know that success is a mind game. It's a complete mind game. Is, what are you going to do when someone criticizes you and tells you you're not good enough and doesn't agree with what you do? Are you going to, say goodbye and give up, or are you going to keep going? Because I think, everyone that will ever do something in this life is going to get people that are, going to make fun of them or are not going to support them. But what differentiates the 99.9% to the 1% that actually make it is the resilience. So a lot of people start things, right? They start it and they go for it for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month, and then the first bump in the road happens and they give up. But I think that's also, so when you want to become successful, it's just like, okay, are you willing to go through all the bumps and all the no's and all the criticism and, Are you willing to do that?